Today on the Word of Mouth podcast, we are joined by Jeremy Kamiya with Kamiya Furniture. Jeremy, I'd like to kind of open the floor to you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you and where you've come from, both personally and professionally.
It's a pleasure just to kind of talk about kind of what I'm doing and where I've been. So I am currently I'm an independent furniture maker. Um, my family and I, we live in High Point. We moved to High Point about 5 years ago to get closer to the furniture party. Um, I've always had kind of a creative drive. So I've always wanted to do something creative. I went to school for photography, and that was a nice way to kind of scratch that itch.
Right.
And then moved into graphic design, and then met my wife. We got married. She's from Bali, Indonesia, and we wanted to find a business that could keep our families close. So, kind of a long story short, we decided to try importing furniture from Bali.
Okay.
So that is how I got into that's how I got into furniture, was importing from Bali, people coming into our small showroom in Durham, North Carolina, and saying, "Oh, this stuff is beautiful. Did you make it?" And after a while, I just got tired of saying, "No, I didn't make it," because again, I'm a creative person, and I just was like, "Well, maybe I could make this."
Right.
So I turned on YouTube, started knocking down old tables that we imported, and just kind of gave it a go.
Really.
So that was about 2015, 2016, and I just, like I said, I kind of gave it a go. I was like, well, this is fun. I think I can do this. We stopped importing, and I just started making my own designs.
Okay.
So that's what I am right now, is trying to be the best independent furniture maker I can be.
And that is probably the hardest way to go about designing furniture, is building it yourself, designing it yourself, like taking everything in house. How has that been as far as a journey from this is what I want to see as a creative to this is what my hands can produce as a craftsman?
It's I don't. This may sound weird, but it hasn't been difficult. I think that maybe it's something I have a knack for. It does
Okay.
come easy for me. Um, I really, it's kind of funny because I'm really doing it all backwards. Whenever you think about the business, like to have a showroom
Right.
and showing, whenever you have no idea. I didn't know anything about furniture, importing it, had no idea. But we just went for it. And, so I started off with a showroom,
Right.
and now I am, I don't have a permanent showroom in some real estate.
Right.
And I've actually just moved into a small studio, which is frankly my 2-car garage,
Okay.
which is exactly what I like. I wouldn't
Right.
change that right now. But as far as, you know, I hate to say it, but it's not too difficult because I've got that design background. I know what I want things to look like. I have
Right.
a certain aesthetic. The challenge is design, coming up with a design in a form and a proportion that you're really happy with, because that's what I'll do first,
Right.
and then I have to figure out how to make it. So I mean, that is the hard part.
Yeah.
But it's a challenge, and I mean, I like that. I like that it's a challenge.
That's got to be so rewarding to design something in your head and then get it out, lay it out in 2 dimension, and then as you see it, like a sculptor removing clay, removing artifacts, you kind of start to see what you thought about in your head sort of translate beautifully within your hands. I mean, that's got to be like one of the more rewarding creative arts there is, and knowing when to step away from it.
It is really rewarding. Whenever it's done, and you wipe off, you've got, you're finished with it. You've waxed it down, and there are moments where whenever I can just sit back and say, "Jeremy, you did a good job,"
Yeah.
and that's really cool.
That's got to be, and all the pieces in your showroom. You have small showrooms, around High Point, and you show pieces at your own home. So this is furniture that has stood not just your scrutiny as a designer and your brand as a storefront, but you live with it on a daily basis. Like, these are designs that are as part of your family. I have been honored to be in your home and see your children doing their homework at desks that dad built, that are these showroom, just beautiful statement pieces of art, and they're doing their homework on it. Like, that's it's part of the family.
Yeah, it is, and it's. I mean, it's a benefit to have the furniture at home because I'm self-taught, and even if even the most classically taught woodworkers, I imagine it's still nice to have your work at home just to see what happens,
Oh, for
because
sure.
wood isn't static; it
Right.
moves, and it's nice to keep an eye on. It's nice to keep an eye on what happens.
Yeah.
So, over a course of a couple of years, you know, I may notice something where I would want to do
Right.
it different.
Yeah.
And if it weren't at my house, then it would be in someone else's house, and it would be denied,
Oh,
that learning
absolutely.
experience. So I enjoy having some of the pieces, especially the older pieces,
Yeah.
home and close to me, not for sentimental reasons necessarily, but just to observe.
It's studying. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's an ongoing experiment. What does this wood do, when left in these conditions for this long? Rocked on and sat on and leaned on and worked on, like, it's like a human life stress test.
yeah, right. Is it over a vent? Is it in the sun? There's a lot of different factors, and that's just in this climate. Whenever it ships out to Montana,
Right. Totally different
it's a
climate.
completely
Yeah.
different thing. So yeah.
That's cool. So, because we are a visual podcast and we are going to have a visual segment to this, whether we're getting B-roll of your pieces or whether we're using B-roll that's been shot, the viewer will have a chance to see your lines and your aesthetic. And I would like to talk a little bit about what they're looking at as they're looking. Like, what is your aesthetic? How do you approach a piece or a project?
I think it'd be important to mention, like one of my, I have to call it an ethos, is to construct a piece without using nails or screws or stains.
Okay.
Since the very beginning, that was an approach that I took, and I decided on that because, well, one, I knew that there were ancient Asian temples, like for instance in Japan,
Right.
that they're still standing, and they didn't use screws and or
Right.
nails. I mean, they just used the natural materials. So
Right.
really precision, just with precision joinery and some ingenuity, you can build a whole temple, a whole house
Right.
without a screw.
Yes.
And I thought that was just really cool.
That is cool. It is.
And just as whenever I was getting into it, and I'm still, I was going to say novice. I'm not a novice, but I'm still, pretty fresh. And I don't know that anyone can name a woodworker necessarily that is known for not using wood, not using metal fasteners.
Right.
I know that they're out there,
Right.
but I don't know that anyone has kind of, really carved that niche.
Right.
And I just was like, well, maybe it could be you. And
Yeah,
that is almost a vain thing to say, but I wanted to create things that were special and new,
Right.
and not new necessarily, but that could be known. I wanted to be known or to establish a reputation for something.
Yeah.
And that seemed like, a neat area to try.
Well, I think so for sure.
Yeah,
I mean,
to
and
try
it's
to fit in.
enhancing the craftsmanship. These are not just the ideas that are coming from your head to the drawings to now the fabrication, but the joinery has to be so precise and it still has to look good while doing its job. The Asian temples that you were talking about, they look as beautiful today as they did 1600 years ago. And they are held together with the own intricate craftsmanship. So now when you scale that down to a desk or a chair, you say, okay, how does this work? How does it stand the test of time while being beautiful, while doing it? You are one of the few designers. I think it's what has always been so inspiring. I've met you and stumbled across you, for the last several years. And I don't think it was until this past Pinnacle Award that you were nominated, having won one in prior years, which I do want to get into that. But I was listening to the way you talked about your pieces, and I thought Jeremy is one of the only designers right now that is really pursuing the heirloom status. The watch how this ages, watch the way this looks, and when it gets handed down to the children and then the grandchildren, watch the character it takes on as part of your home, as part of your family. And I think that with such a disposable culture that we're in, the buy the chair today and in a couple years throw it away and just buy a new one, it's all the same, right? It's just a chair's a chair. You're designing pieces that have heart and a story, woven into every single one of them. And I think that is amazing.
I I feel like I feel like it's an honest approach, to not use metal fasteners. It means that the pieces have to be held together through fit and not by force, right? And I just feel like there's something authentic about that. Also, by not using stains, I'm letting the natural characteristics of the wood be what they are. So nature is beautiful, and I don't want to hide any of that. And well, it's kind of that simple. I want to create. I just want to create something special. I want it. It needs to be difficult. So I I can, if it's not too cheesy, kind of compare what I'm doing with my furniture, my art, like with a marriage, because it these pieces, each one starts from a rough sawn board, and I've got to chisel away parts of each piece, each component, in order to fit them together. So they're not naturally just going to fit together,
Right.
just like two people. We don't naturally fit. I am married.
Right.
And I know that there are parts of me that have been chiseled away and continue to be in order to stay united,
Right.
with my wife, and same for her. And I think that's the case with any
I think
marriage,
that's great.
right?
Yeah.
And also, I don't want to present a facade I don't think anyone should present a facade in
Right.
a marriage union like that. So that's kind of touching on the fact that we are what we are, and let's not try and hide that. So
Right.
if it's furniture, if it's wood, we all have our blemishes or our natural characteristics, and just let those be so that they can be seen.
I think that's
Yeah.
amazing. I think that is such a perfect analogy, in general, the fitment of the two, you know, uh, like but different, that they would not grow together naturally, but, through, honing it down, and it's a lifelong process. And I think, you were touching earlier that you're not a novice, but you're still fairly fresh in it. I think that the way you're approaching your entire contribution to the industry, you are going to design your best pieces right before you stop designing at all. So I think that
Hmm.
you're on such a path to be a journeyman, and then to be, kind of like that wise, the wise woodworker in the, garage out back. And I think that when you're designing those pieces, you will be better than you've ever been. I don't think that there is a point where we look back as creatives and we say that was when I was at my best. I think that if we are open to learning and evolving, I think that we're constantly a little bit better than we were yesterday or the, project before. I think that's one of the things I like the most about creative endeavors is it doesn't have to be perfect. The journey, you're seeing success. We were just speaking to a guest earlier today, and I mentioned the quote that you don't, as a creative, you don't set out to have a look. You look in the rear view and you realize that that's what your look was, what it became, how it started out, which I think is like maybe the my favorite part of our endeavors as creatives is, we're constantly evolving.
Yeah, I think that you're probably right on that. Like, there is likely a signature to what we do when we're expressing ourselves genuinely, when we're not doing it to just match a certain style, or if someone comes at me with a catalog and says, "Can you make this or that?" and I just have to say no. Um, and it's too bad because I want to be of service, but also it's hard to, it's not always fun to turn. You have to have some conviction to turn down a job. Yeah, because I've got kids, and those we need finances, but I guess but I do have that conviction because I know what I want to do, and I don't want to be known for. I want to be known for my own aesthetic, I guess, and for what just comes naturally for me. Because if I've got enough examples of what comes naturally for me out there, then
Right.
people will come to me for just that.
That's right.
So I'm pretty strict on that.
I agree with that 100%. You know, that is the road that we like to believe our entire creative studio is on, is if you build a name for yourself, you don't have to go look for work and then worry about bending to fit the needs to pay the bills. The work comes to you because the people want to be associated with the product that you have outside of the physical product, the experience, you know, the values, you know, what you as a company, and your name is on the door, you know, your name is on every piece of furniture that comes out of your shop, you know, so that represents you maybe more than, you know, if you were just importing furniture or, you know, designing for a larger brand where you may be, you know, the designer, but you designed it for a Hooker or a Bernhardt or something like that. Like, these are deeply representative of you.
Yeah, it's certainly the artistic approach. It may not. I mean, it's not the best business approach. I think I would have to admit, but it's, you know, it's I'm just being an artist in that
Yes.
sense.
Yes.
And but woodworking and being like, to be sustainable as an independent woodworker, and I don't want to act like that is who I am now. I can't say that I'm a successful, sustainable furniture maker, and I like to kind of plant those seeds with anyone who might be watching, because it's very difficult. You're just you're another artist, and we know that it's very difficult to be an artist in that sense. So um, I, I I guess I just don't want to lead anyone in the wrong direction, because it is hard. And I know I know very few successful furniture makers who are independent and doing what, um, I guess, picking the work that they want to do. Because a lot of people that get into the game are, we all want to be the artist, but it's a lottery ticket, and you pay for it for years, you know.
Right.
So you never know what's going to happen. Um, so, you know, a lot of people have to make cabinets, or
That's what I was
you know, they have to
wondering.
keep
Yeah.
those machines running.
Yep.
So
That's what I was wondering. So, you know, talk to us about like some of those late nights, like those the quiet voice, you know, that visits you, you know, when there's nothing else going on. Like, were you always like, did you feel I can do this and I know I'm going to do this and it's all just going to work out, or was it, you know, bringing it into existence? I know that's kind of like an open-ended question, but like, were you one of the, you know, there's no right or wrong answer really. It's, you know, were you one of the people where like the deck was stacked against you to succeed, or were you one of the people that kind
sure.
of came into it with like, if I'm reasonably good at this, I should succeed. Like, there really isn't a failure option here.
I think that when I came into it, and kind of where I am now, I feel like, isn't that much different. I feel like I'm not going to be I'm not going to be without a home.
Okay.
So that my baseline is really, you know, low. Um, so it I mean, I just don't believe that. So I don't feel like I have to worry about that.
Okay. Yep.
And so that, I mean, if it might be such a low baseline that frees me up to at least pursue what I want to pursue, because you get one chance in this life. And I mean, I also I believe that if I needed, if this didn't work out, or if I really needed to find another way to help provide for the family, I would just do that. I would find another way to do it. Um, so I'm, you know, I'm still kind of walking the line with every project that I get. But I'm still learning, continue to learn the whole time. So the more time that I have, it gives me a little bit more knowledge to, give me a little better odds actually doing this sustainably and successfully
Right.
for a longer, for a
Yes.
long time.
Well, and I mean I think that's the goal, and I think I see that in you. I think that's the one thing that's kind of come through in every conversation we've had is you have this driving passion behind it. So I think that it would have to be something absolutely unimaginable to kind of pull you from doing what you are so driven to do. So I do think that you find ways to make them work, and I think that one project will lead to another and lead to another, and you're allowed to, kind of keep in your creative honor. You're not having to subjugate yourself and say, well, I guess I'll do it this time for this.
Yeah, you're right. And because I'm either going to be creative for myself or for someone else.
Right.
So I'm going to fight harder to be creative for myself.
Absolutely. Yep. So I guess, and that kind of leads to, sort of the, pardon the, pun, but the pinnacle of sort of where your dreams and where your passion leads. Talk to us about your reaction when you won the pinnacle, when you were nominated for the pinnacle. Like, again, kind of going back into like where your heart and your mind kind of intersect. When you started designing furniture, did you say this is a cut above the other stuff out here? Like, this is award winning. Like, this should win an award. Or were you blown away? Oh my gosh, they notice who I am.
Whenever I first started, I wanted to be collectible. I wanted to be recognized. There was a lot of pride and maybe, well, hubris behind, that motivation. And I'll be pretty honest about that. But at the same time, if you're going to do something, why not try your best? So, I'm giving myself some leeway, but I'm also acknowledging and admitting that earlier on in my woodworking, which was maybe 8 to 5 years ago, that I was more concerned about what people were thinking and how my
Okay.
work would be received than I am now.
Okay.
It was 2000 and in 2022, I did submit work for the Pinnacle Award by the International Society of Furniture Designers, and I did get selected, and then I did ultimately win the best honor that a designer maker could win for that category. And then I did it again in 2023, and that was awesome. I'm surprised, but I also try. So I, it's one of those things. Awards are subjective. So if you win, that's amazing, and it's a great honor. Really the greatest honor is just to be kind of picked and batched with the other people, the other maker. In my case, other makers that
Absolutely.
you admire.
Yes.
That really is the
Yeah.
greatest honor. The winning is amazing, and then you get a piece of glass to show off. But I think moving forward in my work, I'm much less focused on the accolades, because it can take you over. Like I was certainly earlier on, more tempted by wanting to be recognized.
It's the recognition. Absolutely. I
Yeah.
think that, creatives, we crave affirmation, we crave, more than just acceptance. You want, from the time you're, in school and you're submitting things to art contests, you want the award because it's a chance for you to say, yeah, I thought I had a good idea and I did, and y'all thought so too. But I agree. I think the more in them you get, the more you realize like these are great, but if I'm sacrificing a large portion of who I am as a creative to win this award, it makes it a
Yeah.
little more bittersweet.
I want them all.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I want all of them, but at the same time, I don't want to be ruled by the desire to want them.
Right. Yes.
So,
Yep.
I'm pulled back a lot. I've got more balance. It's much more. I feel better about. I just feel better about not winning. If I don't.
Right.
I'm okay with it.
Yes.
And
Yeah. Well, it
I
allows
do
you to
want
be
them, but
authentic. Right.
it's okay. Same with press.
Yeah.
It's just so nice to have press because they're just ego points
It is.
at the end of the day.
It is.
I mean, yes, they have value, and I am a marketer. Like I
Right.
understand I understand what I can use. Like I want to be in every single magazine so I can put that logo, each one of them, on my website. But I've got to always fight. Like, is this for me or is this, so I sometimes have to step back, and I would much rather not care than care even a little bit. But
Yes, I
I
agree,
do
and
care.
unfortunately, I am in the camp. I care far too much about that stuff, but I think it's, you know, I justify it from our company standpoint that, we are a creative agency in the land of creative agencies. Like there
Hmm.
are so many commercial photographers out there and very talented ones. And so when you can separate yourself, through, PR or, interviews and accolades, I feel like, especially we are young as a creative studio in the game. We work with some of the most talented individuals in the industry, veterans of the industry. But as a creative studio, we're very young. And so I think that if you can come out and you can establish yourself through those accolades and those, society functions, I think that you do it because it is a necessary evil at that point. You need to get your name out there. You need to get like credibility in
Yeah.
the industry. But then I think you are better if you don't get caught up in like the award cycle, chase where you're just submitting everything you do and hoping, I think that becomes like a fool's, errand.
Yeah. I think if I could still, pursue, uh, just pursue recognition, and turn off the emotions, then that would be best. If I were
Yeah.
just a robot that
Yep.
were, like you say, submitting into awards
Yep.
or reaching out to press, but if it was just robot Jeremy, I'd feel a lot better about
Absolutely. Yes.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. It takes a lot of the heart out of the creative. And, I like the idea that as storytellers, I use the analogy a lot that, if I'm a photographer, if I'm, the creative agency representing your work, and you say, this is a chair, and I say, okay, well, tell me about the chair. We're getting ready to shoot it, tell me about the chair. And you say, it's a chair. It has four legs and a cushion and a back. Okay. Makes my job a lot harder because I have to try to convey emotion and things like that. Where if you say, well, this is inspired by a deck chair that was on the Lusitania, and then I changed all these. This is how it's sustainable, and this is where I changed the design and where I paid, homage to like the original design. When you can tell me a story about the piece, you've already kind of sold it in my heart, and then it's easy as a storyteller to then convey that story. So someone else says, I have to have that piece. Like the story is what sells it. It's not the
Right.
fact you put your ass in it or you set a drink on it. It's the story around it that allows it to be part of our family, and I love those stories. I love telling those stories, and those are creative. Those are not, there's no amount of awards that can motivate something like that, and there's no chat GPT or AI function that will replicate the human emotion of like, this is my grandma's table, or I designed this because it reminds me of my grandma. Like I love those moments.
I love it whenever someone tells me that just what you said. My grandpa made this
Right.
table, those sorts of things. My furniture is not going to get near that special. I mean, I want to make special things, but it's not going to touch that.
Oh, I think it. I mean, I think it could. And the beautiful thing would be if we found out where it did or how it did. Like sometimes you can watch movies, film back in the '90s and spot a piece of kind of iconic furniture from our industry and say, oh my gosh, that is a blank cocktail table from this company, and
Hmm.
it's just iconic. It's in movies, it's in people's homes. Is when we're talking about sort of sustaining or creating a legacy for the future generations. I did want to talk a little bit about your family. Your family, I think, is the heart of everything that you do. And, again, I've been very privileged to, meet both of your children, your lovely wife. And, every time I have the opportunity to, talk with you, it is this kind of beautiful, American family story. It's inspiring. So I would like to talk a little bit about, your super talented daughter and, what she's doing. And then sort of as, the Kamiya house sort of takes shape,
Hmm.
what the future is for not just your furniture designs, but sort of, involving every aspect of your family story into the future of your brand.
The vision or the dream for our family is is really quite simple. We want to be close. We want to be around each other as much as possible. Our kids are, our Zoe is 13 and our Zachary is 11. So they will not be in our house forever. My wife, Erin, she teaches them at home. So we do homeschooling, again, to stay close and watch them learn and learn with them, on many occasions. My wife's, one of her passions is cooking. So, I mean, that's, that's an activity you need a home to do as well. And I mean, um, it's, it's literally a nourishing thing. So, I mean, I don't, everyone loves food. So, um, I, we just we want to be very simple, and we want to be as independent as possible and as close as possible. So allowing, by having the homeschool, not only does it give us more time with our kids, but it also gives our children more time for them to do
Right.
other stuff, because homeschool's pretty quick. We don't have to sit down and teach them for
Right.
6 or 8 hours a day. It's a lot quicker than that. So our daughter gives her time to, for instance, explore her art. So she's always been interested in art. And then about less than 2 years ago, perhaps 2 years ago now, she asked us for a set of oils and canvases. And we said, yeah, sure. And she just knows how they work.
Yeah, she does.
She's a natural.
Yes.
She can mix color. She just mixes colors. There must be something about the way that the oils feel on the end of this brush.
Right.
For whatever reason, she's just it's very natural for her. So she's becoming, kind of a beloved artist, and she's so,
Absolutely.
she's so balanced and chill
Yes.
about it.
Yes.
But we don't buy her canvases anymore. We don't buy her oils anymore. She pays for them from the stuff that she sells. So it's a great lesson for her. And she wants to be an artist. She wants to do something similar to what she wants to be, a mother and an artist. So she's on a really good path for that. And she can see how it's happening because she's meeting people here in High Point, working interior designers who are placing her work in homes. So she sees a way to do it. And then she has support from from other networks, like other art galleries in Greensboro and in High Point. So she's making a lot of connections, and she knows that it's an option for her.
That's
So
amazing.
yeah, it's really cool, and yeah, people really enjoy her. So it's a pleasure to see.
I would love to get her on the podcast too, because her ability as an artist is amazing. Taking into consideration her age makes it like unheard of, and the fact she's only been doing it for a few years.
Yeah.
Like, when you look at the kind of work she's producing, you see people work in a career to develop that style we were talking about before. She already has it. Like, she has it, and then in spades. And to see her work through different mediums, the oil versus like her illustrations that she does for her homeschool projects,
Yeah.
those are art projects in themselves. Like, I mean, if she went to any school and presented that, people would be blown away. They think it came out of the textbook. Like, it is just incredible how much talent she has. And I mean, you can see where she gets it from. Your woodworking design. How does that influence her 2D? Like, who is inspiring who in your house at this point?
Well, she will tell you that she gets it. It's from God,
Okay.
and I can't take any credit for her gifts, or our son's gifts, Zachary.
Right.
I can't take any credit for those other than allowing, nurturing them when I can. But
Yeah.
it's very easy to, it's not too hard for us to buy a canvas and some oils to get them started. We want them to explore different areas of expression. So, and our son, who's plays basketball, and so we get him we have him a basketball hoop, and he's got a not championship game, but a playoff game tomorrow. So
that's fantastic.
that's really cool. We love
that's
seeing
awesome.
him. I wouldn't say excel, but just learn. He's still
Yeah.
young. I can't call him.
Right.
I don't know an 11-year-old that is excelling at basketball, but he's really loving it, and he really
Yes.
cares about it. So
Yep.
it's amazing, and I'm sure that'll be a lifelong sport for him, which for us is what's important.
Absolutely. Yes.
Um,
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing to watch them grow and develop. I'm sure in basketball, my son swims, and,
yeah,
uh, to watch him go from, being able to barely tread water, and you're standing by the edge of the pool thinking, I need to be able to jump in there. And then seeing him compete on like a, state level, a couple years later, you're like, yeah, you're faster than me now, kid. Like, there's nothing else I can teach you. Basketball would be about the same. This is how to dribble. Anything other than that, you're on your own.
yeah, it's
Like,
cool. I'm so proud of both of them. They're much better at me with communicating, with dealing with pressure, with being in the spotlight, and
really,
100%. So I'm really, I mean, I just watch and say, wow, I'm glad that, um, I'm glad it's not me in your shoes
really,
sometimes, because
wow,
yeah,
yeah,
I can help them where I can, but
yeah,
they don't. They're they are who they are already, and it's just nice to see
it
that
is.
confidence. I guess that confidence, or maybe the not confidence so much as just comfort
Right.
with who they are.
Yes.
I'm so happy to see that.
I think that's, yeah, I think that's so important. I think as parents, when you see a creative spark in one of your children, you want to kind of nourish that more, because, you see, the world that we live in general wants to kind of, push conformity and kind of push that creative edge down, even from a pretty early age. Earlier today, we were, talking with a young lady. Lego to me is a perfect example. When we were little, you got a box of Legos, you made with it what you wanted. Now Legos are sold with instructions, and if you follow the
Mm.
instruction, you'll get a rocket ship at the end of it. So it's almost taking something that started out fully imaginative and then telling children, well, to play with this appropriately, you actually have to follow step 1 to 92.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder what sort of painful talks they must have had in the back rooms of talking
Yeah,
about, like, no, it was meant to be, you
right. You're
know,
putting it
it,
in a box.
it was meant to be anything,
Yeah,
and we don't need these custom pieces that can only be used for
right.
the tip of this spaceship.
Yes,
I
yeah.
wonder if they had any uh,
I would be curious.
inner, you know,
Yeah,
whatever dialogues about
I would be very
how it was.
curious. It seems like there's very few avenues for kids to like kind of free think and express and sort of like tap into that like unbridled creativity that, as parents, we try to encourage it, every chance you get. When you have a creative, like your daughter, to see that light come on fairly early in her development and say, okay, this is the one that we're going to nurture. Like, we're going to push this one because, my 10-year-old, for instance, he has been in everything from karate to t-ball to soccer. Swimming is where he found his niche,
Yeah,
and it took years of trying all these different things before we found that thing that fit him well. So to look at Zoe's development and say, yeah, I think if we nurtured this creative spark, she'll just run with it. I mean,
yeah. Well, there's a lot of flexibility with oils
yeah,
and or with art, just art supplies, I guess, in general.
right,
And then our son Zachary, he's got his words, so he's a pretty good writer. He really enjoys writing.
good,
So,
that's
and
great.
that's like a perfect Lego.
It is, yeah,
You can do anything with that. So,
absolutely, yes. No, that's a perfect Lego. If you wouldn't mind, where can people find the work you've done, where you've been published, more about you and your brand? And, if they're a designer listening to this, which I hope they are, and they want to know more about your furniture, um, where are we sending people?
well, my work and my story are on my website. That's kamiyafurniture.com. I've got an Instagram. It's called Furniture is Art. And that's just a message that I need to, kind of a seed I need to plant out there. I mean, go to my website,
Okay.
go to my Instagram. Um, you can keep this or not, but I've been featured in, House Beautiful or Interior Design Magazine. I've had work at the Furniture Hall of Fame, Lux, a few national
Yeah.
magazines.
Yeah.
I've just been fortunate to sneak in there.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. But mostly just go to my website and see what drops.
That's perfect. And we will leave it there. I appreciate you so much for coming out today and sitting down and talking to us. And as your brand develops, I want to kind of bring you back periodically and just kind of keep tracking market to market, or spring to winter.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
That'd be
We're going
awesome.
to be here for all of our lives, I hope.
that's
So,
that's perfect. Us too.
okay,
So,
beautiful. Well,
well,
thank you.
thank you very much, Jeremy. I appreciate it again.
Thank you, Ken.